Hello everyone, this is part 3 in changing your life and how to change your life. And this is probably a very tough part because in the first part you made an inventory, the second part you started looking at the energies, the patterns, the mechanisms that you've developed, the energies behind it. And now you of course want to start changing this. Well, first you need to take responsibility, and this is not about victim blaming or, it's my fault, I created this. You've created the life that you have right now. So the people that are in it, the situations that are in it, it has to do with your energy. You can call it karma, but really karma to me is more an opportunity to heal things. So things will come to you because you still have lessons to learn from it. You have energy you carry with you. So this is not about blaming. This is really about just looking, okay, I'm here. I want to change things. What is going on now? Why I'm still attracting these situations that I obviously don't want in my life? Because obviously if you are in a great life, then you're not going to watch a video about how to change your life. Let's face it. So take responsibility and look at yourself. This is one of the most important parts. If you cannot look at yourself, you're not going to change anything. That's why it's sometimes so tough with certain people that do not look at themselves, blame other people, but they're kind of stuck in their own energy. And in that case, it's important to see if you should take, distance from them, or maybe just completely let them out of your life if that's, possible, if they are very toxic or negative, or maybe find a way that is good for you. But we're looking at your life now. There are things that are happening and you noticed, this is not the way I want it to be. I want different things in my love life, different things in my work life. I just want different things. So you can do two things with that, two things to start, so to speak. First, you can just use what's happening now. So just look at your life now. What are the situations you're in trouble with? Maybe with neighbors or with friends or with loved ones or with your work. Just make sure you are in separated, just by yourself, maybe in your bedroom or another room where you're not going to be disrupted. You can sit or lay down and feel. Where do you feel that? Where do you feel? You feel anger, frustration about this, guilt. Where in your body do you feel that? And then you can start feeling that. And this is more for the people that's always been in their heads. Now, I do notice with consultations, I have a way of drawing in, of course, people that have similar things to myself that has to do with my energy. You do attract certain people. And of course, I've mentioned this before, that there was not much room for emotions and feelings in my family. So I really started living in my head, trying to control everything. So to me, what I've noticed is I've done so many things. I'm an essential therapist, so that's 5 years of training with, working with your inner child, working with your inner teenager. I've done systematic work. I've been to a therapist. I've done hypnosis. I've done regression therapy. I've done so many things. Been working for years, and it helped me. It of course created understanding, but the problem was that I knew where everything was coming from. I knew exactly, this is because of that, this is because of this, but it didn't solve anything in my life. Soon I was still hitting a wall at certain areas that I was like, why isn't this changing? I understand where it's coming from. I've done so many things. I've been doing this. Why isn't this changing? And for me, it was because there was no connection with my emotional side. And the emotions attached to this energy, the pain, the anger, the frustrations, keep attracting those situations because they want to be healed. Ultimately, emotions and feelings want to be felt. So, like I said, it's not a blame game that you are creating the same situations over and over again. It's really an opportunity to grow. If you understand the message behind it, you can start working with it. So I did understand the message, but I wasn't receiving the message. I wasn't feeling through it. I wasn't connecting with my emotions and feelings to feel through the pain, the anger, the frustration, anything behind it. So I was still keeping the energy going in myself. I wasn't healing it. So that's why I focus on feeling through things. Of course, if you are an emotional person, you're always in your emotions. There are people living off their emotions. Then, of course, it's important to connect with your mind, create a distance, and start looking at things more with, observing things. Then it will help to look at it from a rational side. But I've noticed myself, my rational side was well developed. I fully understand everything, where it came from, what I could do with it. But it wasn't changing in my life. I was still creating the same situations over and over again because the emotional aspect wasn't being addressed. They say that with your mental abilities, you can control your emotions. Well, you can control them, but you're not going to heal them. You're not going to fix them. And that was tough, starting to feel, because with feelings and emotions, you don't know how long it's going to take. You need to surrender, especially someone living in their heads. That's not my biggest virtue, to surrender or to be patient. I'm not very patient. So that takes time. And I also suggest, if you're starting with feeling things, if you similarly feel like, I need to connect with certain things that are happening, are triggering me, that you take your time first just for 5 minutes to feel through things. Because if you start working with it, your body's not used to it. It's very likely you are actually just staying, you're not really feeling it. You're still above it. You're still trying to look at it and analyze it. Or you can sink completely into it. So when I mean feeling through things, I really mean that something happened, something you feel that you take your time. Okay, where in my body do I feel this? Maybe it's guilty, maybe it's in your lower stomach. You go there with your breathing there and feel it. Just feel it. Don't analyze it. Don't sink into it. Just embrace it. Just let it be. Just let it feel. Let it be there. Very important. So you just open yourself up for it. That's feeling through it. And like I said in the beginning, just take 5 minutes, then stop. Because it will take time, especially when pain and guilt feelings, they've been piling up. So it's very possible that you feel through things and then you're like, you feel this neutral sense. Because if you do feel through things, at a certain point you become neutral. That's where you want to go to, because then you can make decisions from your intuitions without being that this filter of fear or anger or frustration in front of it. You can really look at things clearly. It's very possible 3-4 days later, or maybe a month later, the same thing, similar thing can come up, but it goes on a very deeper level. It's healing again. So take your time in that. And very important, after feeling, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, really work yourself through that. Ground yourself. That was a mistake I wasn't aware of because I was living so much in my head. I started working with my feelings and feeling through them. But I would start doing other things, but I forgot to really ground myself. So the rest of the day I would feel anxious or not completely right because I really didn't ground myself. That's one of the most important things if you want to change your life, is to ground yourself. Without really being in your body, grounding yourself, you won't be able to manifest. You won't be truly able to change your life. And let's face it, a lot of people, including myself, I've lived mostly here, up here. Wasn't really aware of what was going on down there, so to speak. And there are other people maybe in their emotions. Maybe some people are kind of outside of their bodies even, or just in a small part, or just not connected to this part. It's all possible. And if you miss that connection, then you can also see that especially if you're not fully grounded, you most likely are going to meet people that will walk all over you because you're not energetically, you're not there. And on an unconscious level or conscious level, they feel that you're not there, so they can just step over you. That's why grounding is so important. But especially after feeling, really truly feeling and working with your feelings and emotions, do something very earth-like. Ground yourself. Go for a walk in nature. Create a wonderful meal for yourself. Maybe do something physical. It's very important that you do that. So that's the first thing you can do. You can just look and work with what's going on now. So certain situations that are happening now in your life. Work with that, because that will lead you to pain, anger, frustration that you could have taken from your youth or from past lifetimes, future lifetime, doesn't matter. It's all in your life now. So you can just work with that. And you can also work with your parents, because obviously a lot of the patterns created in your youth. So in that case, I suggest you work energetically with your parents. So separate with your father and separate with your mother. They are different people, obviously, with different energies. You can visualize them. So you sit somewhere and visualize you're talking to your father, or visualize that you're talking to your mother. Do not speak to them when they're still alive now. Don't go there and accuse them of all kinds of things. Handle this energetically. Be the parent for your inner child, for the coping mechanisms that were created then. So you can do that. You can write them a letter. Don't send it. Burn it. You can read it out loud and then burn it. But see what comes up. What do you feel? Do you feel like you were appreciated, valued, loved? Maybe you're very angry with your parents. It's very important that you express that energetically. And if you have a lot of anger, see if you can do something physical with that. Because especially when anger has piled up, I have a boxing ball here. I love hitting it. It's a way to, express it. Maybe you want to scream somewhere. Don't throw it out to other people. We really need to start dealing with our frustration, our anger, and our emotions ourselves. But it's especially when it's piled up, it's very important that you find like a physical outlet for that. But don't throw it on anyone, just really deal with it yourself. But that's especially when things have piled up. If you work through that, it's very important. And ground yourself afterwards, obviously. But let me see. One thing that's also important, so you can visualize your parents or you can write them a letter separately, is working with what I've noticed myself. Look at things that happened in your life. Maybe they were traumatic, or certain situation had a lot of impact. Look at the age you were, because some have happened maybe in your youth when you're 7 years old or 8 years old, or maybe something happened in my case when I was 15 years old. I was, of course, thrown out of the house, so to speak, and I had to leave my I was in youth care, so to speak, at 15. So at my 15, that was for me, a lot. And especially when you have these things happening, part of you remains in that. Especially if you have no way to deal with these emotions at that time, and there was no place for that. So I had for a long time, of course, from my youth, I was more of a pleaser, but because of this teenager part, I started to be I had all this rebel side of me as well. And you may notice that in people that proudly say, well, if one person says I should do this, I'm going to do the opposite. It's teenager behavior. In a way, you are kicking against what this person said. You are actually, going against your parents. That's really what you're doing. And I've been doing that for quite some time. I still had that attitude. If someone was telling me, you shouldn't do this, I was going to do the opposite. But it's still teenage behavior, no matter your age. And now, I've been working with this as well, obviously. I'm more like, if someone tells me something, I'm going to feel what is the best for me. So it's possible that I will follow the advice of the person if, it makes sense to me and it's better for me. Because if you do automatically the opposite, it's also possible that you really are hurting yourself ultimately. Because I've done behavior just by being this teenager is not going to accept or tolerate it. I've noticed it with my, I've talked about this, the binge eating disorder. It's going better and better, and I'm very happy with that. But that had that teenager, like, I'm going to do this and no one's going to stop me, and I'm going to eat all the, crap I can find. And that has that teenager vibe to it. So there are a lot of people still acting as teenagers as well. And for me to deal with it now is to just, if that comes up, sometimes I can get triggered. I can feel that anger, frustration, that teenager in myself. I start writing it down, as in the voice of that teenager. I'm not going to do this, and I won't tolerate it. I'm writing it like that, like this angry teenager, so to speak, or this frustrated or sad teenager. And I can just, the beauty of it is, by writing it down, I can just see it, and I can become very mild for myself. And I'm starting to understand why I react in certain situations, especially when I look back at my past. I'm like, oh, no wonder I reacted like that. It's almost like things are falling into place, and it's a perfect way to deal with it. And of course, by giving voice to that teenager or the inner child, you can do the same thing with the inner child. By giving a voice to that, just write it down. You are also be able to feel what's behind it. You can just feel and connect what's behind that. And it works for me. So this is a way of dealing with things. You can start with what's happening now in your life. You can look at your youth. Also look at certain things that happened that really impacted you. What age was that? Also look at, maybe you have some teenage things in yourself that you're still... And it's a coping mechanism. So be mild. You survived because of that. It's very important that we look mildly and lovingly towards ourselves, and not, oh, I should have never said that. I should have never done that. Why didn't I see it at that time? I noticed that I had a lot of judgments towards myself as well. Oh, I should have been wiser then. But, I wasn't at that time. And it brought me to where I am now. So be mild and give yourself time with that. So I'm just going to see if I've mentioned most of the things for this video. I'm just thinking about also the Dutch video. Like I've mentioned before, I don't really have a script. I have a few words I put down. So I'm kind of hoping that the video will be similar. So I talked about the teenager in yourself. It's possible that you still have that angry teenager in yourself, and the inner child. And it's very important not to step over the anger too soon. I do get people saying, yeah, well, I even had that in my own education, that I had to forgive my parents, which is beautiful. But leave it up to when you are really ready. So don't step over that too soon to forgive your parents when you're still very angry. And it's not about expressing that anger towards your parents. It is about dealing with that anger, like I've mentioned, by visualizing your parents, by expressing it that way, or having a physical outlet for your anger, or other ways to deal with it. But don't throw it at other people. Deal with it yourself. And then when you truly are, when there's no anger, you're pretty neutral towards your parents. So if you've, at the point in time where you've pretty much solved all the biggest issue, you can forgive them, because then it's all right as it is. But don't just step over it, because in a way you're kind of shutting up your inner child. Like, you have to shut up now. We have to forgive our parents. Now everything is fine, so don't complain anymore. And really, that doesn't work. You will feel when you're ready for that. So I want to give that as well. And of course, when you start changing things, and I will talk about this in another video, because really it goes faster than I thought, about if you start changing things. So for instance, you want to put up better boundaries. So you're going to say no to people, or you want to say no to people, and that's going to make you feel obviously very guilty, because there is a manipulation technique going on there why you don't stand up for yourself. So for instance, you may feel very guilty towards your mother, and your mother's always asking you to come by every day. And you can't do that anymore. It's taking up too much of your time. Or with other people, maybe your partner asks things of you that you're like, yeah, this doesn't feel right to me anymore. The best thing is to create distance. So if people are asking you and you're always the one to say yes, say, give me some time. I have to think about it. So create strategies that will give you some space. And then, of course, deal with the guilt. So do start putting up boundaries. And I will talk about this in my next video about resistance and of course what you can encounter in your life, because if you're going to change energies, you're in the process of changing it, you're going to get resistance inside of yourself and you're going to see that reflected outside of yourself as well. So it's very important, if you work through things, you want to change things, that you also deal with that uncomfortable feeling and work with those guilt feelings, especially if you want to really stand up for yourself and you feel guilty about that. Work with that guilt, because that is keeping you trapped in this pattern. That's really the trigger. Because if you don't feel guilty anymore, you can truly stand up for yourself and it won't be such a hustle anymore, because people will feel automatically that they cannot consciously or unconsciously manipulate you anymore. So I want to talk about that in another video. Very important to ground yourself when you work with these things, with emotions, feelings, ground yourself. It's very important just to be really present. If you want to change your life, manifest what you truly want, you need to be in your body, you need to be present. I'd like to leave it at this and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.